With the president back on the scene with a stimulating speech at the conservative rally in Florida, it's time we get serious about the next presidential election, as campaigning should start soon. But we need to prepare for the possibility that while the ex-president might lead the charge to take back the White House, he might decide not to run. What we need is a list of the characteristics the Republican Party would look for in a man. And who would better to ask than one of our great Republican leaders, Ted Cruz? Please join us for What Would Jesus Look For in a Republican presidential candidate? Ask Ted. I mentioned in the introduction that President Trump spoke at the conservative conference in Florida. Now, first of all, you had to be happy to see him back again, out in the forefront, trying to bring back integrity to our country after about 6 weeks of the Democrats in the White House. Who better to do it? The knowledge this man brings with him is remarkable. Why, he let us know that this new president's first days in office were the worst in the history of the country. Now, have you been hearing that anyplace else? Of course not. The left-wing cancel culture is too strong to let that happen. Can you believe the number of researchers he must have to make a statement like that? Remarkable. But the purpose of this video is to discuss just what kind of person the Republican Party should be looking for their next presidential candidate, just in case our president decides not to run. Now, I think he's teasing us and probably will run, but just in case, if we're going to be successful, we need a person just like him. And since Ted Cruz was considered important enough to be a speaker at that conference and has a strong history with Mr. Trump, who better to ask? And I have an exclusive here. I have been told by someone who was at that conference using a badge from Fox News, who had a few of their people speaking at the conference and gave $250,000 to finance it, that Mr. Cruz has a surprise video coming out. As a matter of fact, the first episode is Traveling with Ted, entitled God Created Cancun Too. And the second one is Traveling with Ted, Cancun in Less Than a Day. I'm told someone leaked this to Rick Steves, and he's thinking he might have to move from PBS to Fox just to compete with Mr. Cruz. But I'm getting off the subject. Mr. Cruz is our resident expert on Mr. Trump, as he ran against him and worked for him in the Senate. And with his knowledge of the running of the country from his Senate perch, let's see what Ted has said about Mr. Trump and his qualifications for president, and even what the president said about him. So, Ted said this about Mr. Trump. He's a sniveling coward. He's a pathological liar and a serial philanderer. Now, I'm not sure which one of those he thinks is the top or the bottom, or if there are other ones. But let's continue. So it might be important to understand the character of the ex-president and how he treats others. And what better way to see what impresses Ted in the way the president treated him? This should give us some very valuable insight. Our ex-president at one time suggested Ted's wife was less than beautiful. And while some might agree and some might disagree, the president, always a man in search of the truth and the use of facts, posted pictures of Ted's wife and his side by side. After all, the president would never want to make any kind of observation, this personal, without having facts to back it up. Now, while Ted did not say he disagreed, he said she was the love of his life. And the president had no right to say that. You know, I've always wondered if Ted's wife would have liked him to say that, yes, she was beautiful. Whatever. But Ted must think that is the kind of thoroughness and honesty our country needs again after a month of this current president, who's allowed himself to be distracted by COVID vaccines and a relief package for millions of Americans and whether people are wearing masks or not. Our ex was able to stay focused on more important things when he was in office. And this president, he goes to mass every day. Sure, but how often has he taken the time to walk to a church and hold up a Bible? That's inspiration. Going to church every morning when nobody can see you, is that leadership? Ted obviously recognizes it. Mr. Trump also said that Ted's father was part of the assassination of JFK. And that wasn't just a wild accusation. Mr. Trump got his information from the National Enquirer, which many people used to get their information from when we were allowed to shop at grocery stores. And as an aside, I was hoping that the National Enquirer would take out some ads so that when you hit the checkout button on your computer, an ad for the Enquirer would pop up and it would be the front page of the Enquirer. And that way you could read the front page before you hit accept order. It would make this at-home shopping thing more real. In any case, the president knew this was a true story because the paper was run by a good friend who avoided jail. He didn't even have to go to jail. He got immunity in that Bezos libel case. Or was it the catch and kill Playboy case with the president? It really doesn't matter. He was a very honest man. But let's stop there. When we return for part 2, we're going to talk about the truth about lying and why Ted sees the ability to create truth so important in a presidential candidate, and how the president knew about Ted's knowledge of rigged elections and why that's important now. We will then summarize and then end with a prayer. I hope to see you for part 2.